Welcome back. Today, we are investigating the Dyatlov Pass incident, the night 9 experienced hikers cut open their tent and disappeared into the freezing darkness. On a frozen mountain in the Soviet Union, 9 experienced hikers made a decision that appears impossible. During the night, they cut their way out of their own tent. They left behind boots, coats, food, tools, cameras, and equipment. Then they moved down an exposed mountainside into darkness, wind, and extreme cold. Searchers later found a line of footprints leading away from the camp. The tracks did not suggest a violent chase. They did not lead toward a village, road, or rescue station. They led toward a forest more than a kilometer away. Some of the hikers were found near a small fire beneath a cedar tree. Others appeared to have tried to return uphill toward the tent. 4 more were discovered much later in a snow-covered ravine. Several had injuries serious enough to inspire decades of suspicion. The tent had not been looted. Valuable items remained. There was no clear evidence of a struggle with outsiders, and the original Soviet investigation ended with a phrase that explained almost nothing. The hikers had died because of an overwhelming natural force they could not overcome. That vague conclusion created one of the 20th century's most famous mysteries. Was the group attacked? Did a secret military test frighten them from the tent? Were the strange lights reported in the region connected to their deaths? Did toxic chemicals, powerful wind, or an avalanche force them into the night? Or did several dangers combine in a sequence that only looks impossible when we examine each clue separately? Today, we will reconstruct the final expedition from the evidence that survived. We will separate confirmed facts from stories added later. We will test the major theories. And we will return to the question at the center of the case. What could make 9 experienced hikers abandon their only shelter in one of the most dangerous environments on Earth? In January 1959, a group of young Soviet hikers began a winter expedition through the northern Ural Mountains. Most were students or recent graduates connected to the Ural Polytechnic Institute. They were not beginners. They had experience with long-distance skiing, mountain travel, winter camps, navigation, and difficult conditions. The expedition was led by Igor Dyatlov. He was 23 years old, technically skilled, organized, and respected by the others. The planned route was demanding. The group intended to cross remote terrain and reach mountains with names that would later become part of the legend. One of them was Otorten. Another was Kolat-Syakhl, a name often translated as Dead Mountain. The name sounds like a warning created for the story. But the hikers did not enter the region believing they were approaching a supernatural place. They saw a challenging route that could qualify them for a high level of Soviet hiking certification. The original party contained more than 9 people. One member, Yuri Yudin, became ill and turned back before the final stage. That decision saved his life. The remaining hikers continued north. They carried cameras and kept diaries. Their photographs show ordinary moments of a difficult expedition. They skied through deep snow. They repaired equipment. They joked with one another. They cooked. They argued about small problems. Nothing in the surviving material suggests a group expecting an attack or participating in a secret mission. Their final photographs show deteriorating weather and difficult visibility. On February 1st, the group moved toward the pass. They appear to have drifted west of their intended route. Instead of descending into a protected valley, they found themselves on the exposed slope of Kolat-Syakhl. They could have continued down toward the forest. They could also have returned. Instead, they built their camp on the slope. That choice became the first link in the disaster. The campsite was exposed to wind. The hikers cut into the snow and created a level platform for their long tent. This was not automatically reckless. Experienced winter travelers sometimes camp above the tree line to avoid losing altitude or changing course. The group may have wanted to practice camping in difficult mountain conditions. They may also have been tired and unwilling to continue in poor visibility. Inside the tent, they removed boots and outer clothing. Food was prepared. Diaries and cameras remained with the group. Their skis were placed beneath or near the shelter. The scene suggests a normal camp settling into the night. Then something changed. The exact time is unknown. The exact trigger is unknown. But the response was immediate enough that the hikers did not leave through the normal entrance. Cuts were made in the tent fabric. The group exited without collecting the clothing and footwear required for prolonged survival. This does not necessarily mean they were irrational. It suggests that they believed remaining inside the tent was more dangerous than leaving it. That belief may have lasted only a few seconds. Once outside, they moved downhill. The surviving footprints have often been described as calm and orderly. That description should be treated carefully because wind and later snowfall affected the tracks. But searchers did identify a trail of people descending toward the forest. There was no clear second trail belonging to attackers. There were no vehicle tracks. There was no evidence that the hikers had been tied together or forced at gunpoint. The most likely interpretation is that they left the tent under their own power. The mystery is why. Before exploring the theories, we must follow the searchers who arrived weeks later. They did not know they were entering a legend. They believed they were searching for delayed travelers. The group was expected to send a telegram after completing the route. When no message arrived, concern grew gradually. Delays were not unusual on difficult expeditions. But as the days passed, relatives and university officials pressed for a search. Rescue parties entered the region. Aircraft surveyed the mountains. Searchers followed the planned route and examined abandoned camps. On February 26th, they found the tent on the eastern slope of Kholat Syakhl. It was partly covered by snow and appeared damaged. The entrance was closed or obstructed. Cuts in the fabric were later identified as having been made from the inside. Inside, the searchers found equipment that should have been essential to anyone leaving the mountain. Boots, warm outer clothing, food, personal items, cameras, documents, money. The arrangement was disturbed, but the camp did not resemble a robbery. No one had carefully selected valuables. No outsider had emptied the shelter. The hikers seemed to have left rapidly, expecting either to return or to survive only a short time outside. The searchers then identified footprints descending toward the forest. Some tracks appeared to have been made by people wearing socks, one boot, or no proper footwear. This clue is central. The group was not simply lost while traveling. They had abandoned a known shelter and moved away from supplies that could have kept them alive. Whatever happened at the tent created a new priority. Distance from the campsite became more important than warmth. The forest offered several things the exposed slope could not. Trees could reduce the wind. Wood could provide fire. The terrain could offer concealment and temporary shelter. The hikers feared an avalanche. Descending out of the possible path made sense. If they feared an explosion, strange light, or unidentified threat near the tent, the forest also offered protection. The tracks continued downhill for more than a kilometer. The distance is difficult to imagine in winter darkness. Even in good clothing, walking across deep snow would consume energy. Without proper boots and coats, the cold would begin disabling hands, feet, judgment, and coordination. At the edge of the forest stood a large cedar tree. Beneath it, searchers found the remains of a small fire. Nearby were the first two bodies. Yuri Krivonishenko and Yuri Doroshenko had little clothing compared with what the conditions required. Branches on the cedar were broken at several heights. Some investigators believe a person climbed the tree to look toward the tent. Others think the branches were collected for the fire. The cedar may have become the group's first emergency point. From there, they could wait for the immediate danger to pass. They could watch the slope. They could build warmth. They could decide whether to return. But the fire was not enough. The forest floor was exposed. The temperature was severe. Wind continued moving across the mountain. The group needed a better shelter. They also needed the clothing still inside the tent. At some point, the hikers appear to have divided. That division can explain why they were later found in different locations. Between the cedar and the abandoned tent, searchers found 3 more hikers: Igor Dyatlov, Zinaida Kolmogorova, Rustem Slobodin. Their positions suggested that they may have attempted to climb back toward the campsite. They were not found together in one place. They were located at different points along the route. This pattern is consistent with people losing strength one after another. Hypothermia does not simply make a person feel cold. It reduces coordination. It slows thought. It can produce confusion, poor decisions, and eventually unconsciousness. A strong person may believe the shelter is close while having no ability to reach it. The group may have waited in the forest until they believed the danger had passed. Then some tried to recover boots, coats, food, and tools. The climb required moving uphill into stronger wind. They failed. The first medical examinations concluded that these hikers had died from hypothermia. Slobodin had a skull injury, but investigators did not consider it the direct cause of death. Falls on ice, rocks, or hard snow could have produced such trauma. The first 5 bodies created a tragic but understandable sequence: emergency evacuation, descent to the trees, fire, attempted return, death from exposure. Then the remaining 4 bodies were found. Their condition made the case far more difficult. The final 4 hikers were not discovered until May, when snow conditions changed. They were found in or near a ravine beneath several meters of snow. The group had attempted to build a shelter there. Branches and clothing suggest that they were trying to insulate themselves from the cold. Some clothing had been taken from hikers who had already died. This is not evidence of violence between group members. In a survival situation, removing useful clothing from someone who cannot be saved may be the only rational choice. Several of the ravine victims had severe internal injuries. Chest fractures. A major skull injury. The injuries were serious, but the bodies did not show the kind of widespread external damage expected from a prolonged fight. This led to comparisons with forces produced by a vehicle collision or heavy pressure. The injuries became the foundation for theories involving explosions, military weapons, and attacks. But the ravine itself offers another possibility. A fall into a snow-covered channel could produce powerful blunt force. A snow shelter could collapse. A heavy slab of snow could compress bodies against hard ground or rocks. The location was different from the open slope where the tent stood. It contained uneven terrain hidden beneath winter snow. The missing soft tissue found on some bodies also became part of the mystery. But these bodies had remained in a wet ravine for months. Water, decomposition, and animal activity provide ordinary explanations for damage that later appeared unnatural. The injuries remain important. They do not automatically prove an attacker. They show that the group faced more than cold alone. Soviet investigators examined the tent, clothing, bodies, photographs, diaries, and witness statements. They considered whether the hikers had been attacked by local Mansi people. The evidence did not support that theory. The Mansi had helped search the region. There was no clear motive. No second group's tracks were identified at the campsite. The hikers' property had not been stolen. Investigators also considered conflict within the group. Again, the scene did not show a fight capable of explaining the evacuation and all 9 deaths. The official case was closed in May 1959. The final conclusion referred to an overwhelming natural force. The wording was frustratingly vague. It did not explain the cut tent. It did not reconstruct the descent. It did not connect the severe injuries with a specific event. The absence of a clear answer allowed later theories to multiply. The political environment made suspicion easy. The Soviet Union conducted secret military programs. Information was controlled. Officials sometimes concealed accidents. Several hikers had worked in sensitive technical environments. Traces of radioactive contamination were reported on some clothing. Witnesses in the wider region described unusual lights in the sky. Each detail appeared to point toward a hidden operation. But a theory must explain the whole scene, not only one strange clue. The military test theory exists in many forms. a missile exploded near the hikers. A parachute mine or other weapon produced a blast. Toxic fuel or chemical gas forced them from the tent. The group witnessed something secret and was eliminated. These scenarios benefit from the secrecy of the Soviet state. A missing document can be interpreted as evidence of a cover-up. A light in the sky can become a rocket. Radioactivity can become proof of a weapon. But the physical scene creates problems. There was no confirmed blast crater near the tent. The forest did not show widespread explosive damage. The tent and personal items were not burned or scattered as expected from a powerful detonation. No reliable evidence shows that armed personnel entered the camp. The valuables remained. The footprints still appear to belong mainly to the hikers themselves. The reported radioactivity was limited and found on clothing connected to people who may have encountered radioactive material through earlier employment. It was not evidence that the entire campsite had been exposed to a nuclear event. Reports of lights are harder to evaluate. Some were recorded at different times or from distant locations. Military rockets, atmospheric events, and unrelated observations may all have contributed. Strange lights could have existed without causing the hikers' deaths. The attack theory has similar weaknesses. There is no clear sign that outsiders forced the hikers downhill. The group possessed knives, axes, and sky poles, yet they left many tools behind. If attackers stood at the entrance, cutting through the tent might make sense, but the absence of attacker tracks and the lack of theft remain difficult to explain. The simplest theory should account for the evidence without inventing people or machines that left no trace. That returns us to the mountain itself. Avalanche was suggested early, but many researchers rejected it. The slope near the tent looked too shallow. Searchers did not report a large avalanche debris field. The tent had not been carried far downhill. The footprints remained visible. The hikers were experienced enough to recognize avalanche danger, and the group appears to have left the shelter many hours after cutting into the slope to build the camp. A major avalanche should have produced obvious destruction. These objections are powerful against the image most people imagine. A roaring wall of snow racing down the mountain and sweeping everything away. But not every avalanche looks like that. A small slab avalanche can involve a compact section of snow breaking loose and moving a short distance. It can strike a tent without carrying the entire camp far downhill. It can create enough pressure to injure people and convince the group that a larger slide may follow. Wind can also move fresh snow across a slope after the tent is built. The danger at midnight may be greater than the danger at sunset. The absence of a large debris field weeks later does not eliminate a small wind-loaded slab. Snowfall, wind, and search activity could alter the scene. The question is not whether a giant avalanche destroyed the camp. The question is whether a limited snow slab release could have triggered the evacuation. In 2020, a renewed Russian investigation concluded that avalanche danger was the most likely cause. The conclusion remained controversial. Then researchers attempted to test the mechanism mathematically. In 2021, researchers Johann Gauma and Alexander Puzrin published a model examining whether a delayed slab avalanche was physically possible at the campsite. Their explanation began with the way the hikers cut into the slope. The group created a flat platform for the tent. That cut may have weakened a buried layer of snow beneath a denser slab. The failure did not need to occur immediately. Strong winds could transport additional snow above the tent over several hours. As the load increased, the weakened layer could eventually collapse. A compact slab could then move into the campsite. The researchers calculated that such a slab might be large enough to cause serious injuries, while remaining too small to create the dramatic avalanche field people expected. Their model did not claim to solve every detail. It demonstrated plausibility. A delayed slab release could occur on that slope under specific snow and wind conditions. Later field expeditions documented slab avalanches in the Dyatlov Pass region and found slopes steep enough to release them. This weakened one of the strongest objections, that avalanches simply did not occur there. But a snow slab alone does not explain every death. It explains the urgent evacuation. The remaining events require a sequence involving darkness, wind, injury, cold, and decisions made under pressure. When reconstructed as a chain, the mystery becomes less supernatural. It also becomes more tragic. The following reconstruction is not proven in every detail. It is the scenario that currently fits the largest number of confirmed clues with the fewest unsupported assumptions. The hikers build their tent by cutting into the slope. Wind transports snow above the campsite. Hours later, a small slab releases. It strikes or partly buries the tent. Some hikers may be injured. Others fear that more snow could follow. The normal entrance is obstructed, slow to reach, or positioned toward the danger. They cut through the fabric and leave immediately. They expect to remain outside only until the slope becomes safe. Because the wind is severe and visibility is poor, they descend toward the forest. They follow one another to avoid separation. This produces the line of footprints. At the cedar, they build a fire. Someone climbs the tree or breaks branches while looking toward the campsite. The group realizes that the danger will not pass quickly. They divide their efforts. Some begin preparing a deeper shelter near the ravine. Some attempt to return to the tent for clothing and equipment. The return group loses strength on the exposed climb. They collapse at different distances from the forest. Near the cedar, the fire fails to provide enough warmth. The two hikers there die from exposure. The remaining group works in the ravine. A snow shelter collapses, or people fall onto rocks hidden below the snow. This produces the severe internal injuries. Those who survive the initial impact cannot escape the cold. Snow later covers the ravine. Water and decomposition alter the bodies before their discovery. This scenario explains the cut tent. It explains why equipment remained. It explains why no attackers' tracks were needed. It explains the movement toward the forest. It explains the fire. It explains the attempted return. It provides possible mechanisms for the injuries. And it explains why the hikers were found in separate groups. The theory is not perfect. No witness survived. The exact size of any slab cannot be measured. The timing remains uncertain. The original campsite was disturbed before modern analysis could occur. But mystery should not be preserved by demanding impossible certainty from one explanation, while allowing conspiracy theories to exist without physical evidence. What really happened at Dyatlov Pass? The confirmed evidence does not support a monster, alien encounter, or organized execution. It does not show that the Mansi attacked the group. It does not demonstrate that soldiers entered the camp. It does not prove that a secret weapon exploded beside the tent. Those theories depend on events that should have left clearer physical traces. The most convincing explanation begins with the environment. A wind-loaded snow slab or immediate fear of avalanche. Danger forced the hikers to evacuate. They descended to the forest because it offered shelter and fuel. Then several problems combined. Some may already have been injured. They lacked proper clothing. The temperature was extreme. The wind erased visibility and consumed body heat. The distance back to the tent became almost impossible. The group divided between building shelter and recovering equipment. Every decision reduced the number of people available for the next task. Hypothermia weakened judgment and movement. A fall or shelter collapse in the ravine caused additional trauma. By morning, no one remained capable of rescue. This conclusion does not mean every detail has been solved. We do not know exactly who cut the tent. We do not know the precise order in which the hikers left. We do not know whether the first snow movement caused injuries or only fear. We do not know exactly how the ravine group received every fracture. The original investigation was incomplete. The site was altered. The evidence spent weeks or months beneath snow. Absolute certainty may be impossible. But an unresolved detail is not proof of a conspiracy. The Dyatlov Pass incident became famous because the clues were separated from one another. A cut tent, bare footprints, a distant fire, bodies on the slope, severe injuries in a ravine, strange lights, radioactive clothing. Placed side by side without sequence, they appear impossible. Placed inside one night of snow, wind, darkness, injury, and hypothermia, they begin to connect. The true horror of Dyatlov Pass may not be that an unknown force hunted 9 people across the mountain. It may be that ordinary dangers arrived in the wrong order. A small failure in the snowpack, a rapid evacuation, a descent made without equipment, a fire that could not last, a return journey that became too difficult, a shelter that did not hold. Each event was survivable alone. Together, they formed a trap. The hikers did not vanish into a supernatural mystery. They fought to survive with the knowledge and strength they had. They built a fire. They tried to create shelter. They shared clothing. They attempted to return for supplies. The evidence does not show helpless panic. It shows organized survival efforts slowly defeated by an environment that offered no second chance. That is why the case remains powerful. The mountain did not need a monster. The cold was enough. And the final question may not be why they ran from the tent. It may be why they believed they could return before it was too late.